Welcome. Hey, Denise from Ohio. How you doing?
Hello, hello, welcome. Happy Monday afternoon.
Yeah, girl, it is. How's your soul?
My soul is good.
My soul is okay, but I am beleaguered. It's beleaguered by all the dishonesty that's coming out now. And since this is a program for trauma survivors, and it's for trauma survivors who want very much to live our lives as our lives, to
Right, as
stop living
authentically as possible. That's what we
as
go for.
we go for being authentic. We go for being true to ourselves. My true self, as Carl Jung would say, that's what I'm after here. And the more I'm lied to, and the more it's assumed that the liar is telling the truth, the more gaslighting comes around and the more crazy things get. So what we do in these programs is we talk about how can we, as everyday people that are trauma survivors, have, as Denise just said, an authentic life and a good life, regardless of the junk that's going on. Now, that does not mean that I'm going to be happy all the time. There are many times when I am sad, I'm angry, I'm upset. However, the gift of that is trauma survivors are raised with three rules. Number one, don't talk. Number two, don't don't trust anybody. And number three is the biggie, and that is zip it. Don't talk with anybody. Don't feel. Don't talk. Don't trust. Don't feel. And so Denise and I were both raised with that. And if you're a trauma survivor, were you raised with that too? Having feelings and sharing your feelings was just totally dangerous. Oh, I mean, what would happen, Denise, if you shared your feelings? What would happen when you're a kiddo?
I really did not. My mom's favorite song to sing to me was Big Girls Don't Cry.
Perfect.
Right. And I had a sister that was very emotional full. She had all the emotions and big. And, she was labeled the crazy one.
Yep.
And you know, uh, she was wrong to do that. And I bought into that, that it was not uh, good to show all your emotions. So, but I do share my emotions authentically.
And why is that, sweetie? I mean, we were taught really loud and clear. I was taught, don't you have any feelings? Because feelings equal vulnerability. That's one of the reasons not to have feelings. If I say, as I did one time to my father, you hurt me, I'm going to leave. I cannot stay here. That was so verboten and so forbidden to say anything about how I feel because it made me vulnerable. If he knew what's in particular hurt me, then he had license. He had permission to, because my father was sadistic. One of the things about narcissists is that not only do they gaslight, but they can be sadistic. And narcissists, Denise, how would you describe a narcissist? What's that about?
Everything is related to them. All, if you say something, you're hurting them. If you can't challenge anything that they say. And they're the boss and you're vulnerable. Right.
They are in charge, and we are just their supply.
Right.
Supply of helping them feel what they need to feel about themselves, which is superiority. And I had no idea what a narcissist was when I was growing up. Did you have any
No,
idea?
no.
People would just say, well, that's just Uncle so and so, or that's
Right.
just your father,
Well, we
or that's,
tolerated it from men. Men got to take whatever they want, be whoever they want, and we had to tolerate it.
I hear you, girl. And that was it. And the law, look, I'm a recovering attorney, as we know, and that's what the law said. The law literally said a man's home is his castle. He can do what he wants in his home. And that's why until 1993, spousal rape, a man could rape his wife and it was fine
Right.
in
It
some of
wasn't
the
even a
states.
thing. I mean, spousal rape? No, there's no such thing as that. They get
There's
to
no
take
such
whatever they want.
right. It was, you don't have to consent. It was part of your job,
Your duty, right?
your duty, honey. And so narcissism, what I said to, I have an older sister left, and I said to her, hey, Lynn, you know, father was a narcissist. And she said, well, isn't every man?
She's kind of right.
And I thought, whoa, that's really sweeping. And the answer is no, but in many ways, the chances of a male being a narcissist are higher than a female being a narcissist, I
Right.
think. What do you think, Denise?
Yeah, I think they're more inclined in that direction. They're socialized to be that way.
Well, for sure, not all men are, you know, because I
Not
know
all.
some,
No, there's
you know, we got,
plenty of
but a
fine,
lot of
good
them,
men. Yeah.
like Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers, not a narcissist.
Phil Donahue.
Phil Donahue, not a narcissist. You got it. Okay, now we got two. Tim Walls. Tim
Not a
Walls, not a
narcissist.
narcissist. Let's do the president.
Barack Obama is not a,
He wasn't a bad narcissist. He wasn't about narcissism. He
no,
wasn't.
he wasn't.
Um, I mean, Michelle, his wife, might say in some cases he was, but no. And the current person, I don't even like to say his name.
Don Old.
Don, the current person we have is a total narcissist, and there are types of narcissism. First off, let's just be really clear. In addition to what Denise said, a narcissist is the center of the universe. Everybody owes the narcissist. Everybody pays respect to the narcissist, and everybody is there to be used by the narcissist. Narcissists are a word that I learned when I was a kid, and I loved it. I didn't know the word narcissism, but I knew solipsistic. And solipsistic, SOLIPSISTIC, perhaps means self-centered center of the universe. And that's what a narcissist is. And I think that it's a good chance more men are narcissists than women, because here's an example. My mother had 3 daughters. I was supposed to be the son. That caused a lot of discord in my family. As we know, my father would yell when he would see me, get her out of my sight. I was supposed to be the son. My mother said to me over and over again, Janice, she would say, it's a good thing I didn't have a son. I said, why not, Mom? Because I would have spoiled him rotten. And I said to her after a while, because I was just thinking about that, why would she have spoiled a son rotten? And I thought of
Because they
things like,
deserve
okay,
it.
right. It's a mandate. Males they got all the power. And
Right.
women's job is to
Laugh at their jokes, pick them up, say how wonderful they are. Everything that we do is a reflection to them. So we have to be very careful to make it a good reflection,
got it, girl. Like my mother said to me. I mean, when I think about it, my mother gave me a lot of cues. I don't think she knew that's what she was doing, but she gave me a lot of cues when she said that thing about it's a good thing I didn't have a son, I would have spoiled him rotten. And I said to her, well, why spoil him rotten? And she couldn't, at that point, I think she caught on that she had said something that maybe wasn't the best thing. So she said, well, maybe I wouldn't have, but she said it so much and she meant it so much. And what she taught me, and I want to ask people that are listening, by the way, we'd love for you to get into the chat. All you have to do is, Denise, you would be better at how to do this than I am. It's a chat thing at the bottom, right?
Right. You just click that word chat and it will put the chat over here on the side of your picture of us. And then you can just read or type in or.
And you'll see that there's something typed in already, which is welcome, fellow travelers. And so what you can do if you feel like going on the chat is you can put in anything that you want us to look at, and we will look at it. If you feel super confident And nobody's expected to do anything. You're always at choice here. You're here for you. And we're here to honor you and honor ourselves. So if you want, for example, to click audios, you can click audio and then we can hear your voice. Or you can click video too, and then you'll join us as one of the 3 people. And we've had that. But before we do that, and before we continue with narcissism, I want to say one other thing before it leaves my mind. My mother was teaching me how to be with boys. One of the things she said to me was, Holly, you've always got to let them win.
Right.
You've always got to encourage them to talk. You be a good listener. You let them win. I said, what fun is that? No, you must let them win because they need to feel you need to help them feel good about themselves. The next thing that follows that is you'll have control of them, more control if you are the one that helps them feel good, because then they'll need you. But what she wasn't saying when she said that, because I don't think she knew, what she wasn't saying was, look, the whole game between men and women is a game. They can't be honest. You have to manipulate because men are in power and men have power and they can hurt you. Men have financial power. They can disown you. In my case already, my father was abusive, physically abusive. He hurt me. And then he disowned me. He disowned me when I was in my 20s because, oh my God, I became sexual in my 20s. I had boyfriends. I experienced sex. Well, hell, I'm 22 years old. I go, wait a minute. It's high time. But let's talk about, just briefly, Denise, let's you and I just make sure that everybody who's joining us, either now or after the fact, knows that we believe in safety first. And that's not like, be good, be quiet. No, that means your emotional safety and ours is the first step before we do this program. So one of the things, so Denise, what can people do to protect themselves if they get triggered by something we're saying?
Bring water. We always have water. And
Take
we
a
drink
break,
it
get your water, honey.
It really helps to not be or to calm triggering.
Yeah, anything I do physically that's a routine for me will take me back into some sense of stability. And drinking water does that. Plus, water is, we hope, pure, unadulterated, good for us. What else? What is, supposing like we're talking, like I just said something about my father physically hurt me and my father disowned me. Now that could trigger somebody. Trigger means, as you know, to be reminded of a horrible injustice, a horrible invasion,
Your
a horrible
body could
adverse life experience to our body, to our soul, to our well-being. And
right. Our
because that
body
was
goes back to that.
right, the body keeps
To the fear,
score.
to the angst, to the uncomfortableness. So
To
if
the
you feel
dread.
that, if you're triggered and you feel that, you can always get a caring therapist on your phone with Google Warm Line, Trauma Warm Line, and they can help you. Or you can message either one of us. We're
You got it. Now
willing for that too.
we're not professionals, but we're good listeners and we are fellow travelers and we've been through
We've
a
been
whole
through it.
lot. And so we're not licensed to like counsel you. But what happens is if you find you need to talk with somebody else, you still want to stay with us, but you want to get online and just share with somebody. Janice is right. There are trauma warm lines. Hotlines are for people that are in extreme. You know, you really have to have somebody.
Crisis,
But
right?
crisis. But warm lines are, oh man, I'm having that awful old feeling again. The awful old feeling for me is I'm not worth anything. I should be depressed. I shouldn't be happy. My family's unspoken message came to me in a dream and through a prayer. I was praying and I asked to be to hear the secrets that were not said, but they were loud and clear to my heart. And one of those secrets that came clear to me was, we can't be happy and you can't be happy either. So when I get triggered, my spirit starts going downhill. I start to lose respect for myself. So what Denise said is there's a trauma, there's a therapist waiting for you, and that's eventually true. But the warm line has fellow travelers, is people who are peer support, which means it is somebody like Denise and me. We've been there, we've done that. We know to listen. We know to care. We know not to judge. And those people will have resources, just like Denise said. If you want to follow up and find someone who's skilled at trauma counseling, I assure you, it's really helpful to have someone who's a trauma therapist. What do you
It
say about
is.
that, Denise? Why
It
does
is.
that make a difference?
It's helpful because there are similar things, there are similar responses that we have due to our trauma. And so if we have been through trauma and we've worked to heal that, we can be helpful to others. That's the whole benefit. The bonus is helping others to, come to terms with their own truth and how to cope with that truth.
And what I'm hearing too is that for me to be able to do that for anybody else, I need to learn how to do that for myself first.
Right.
And as a trauma survivor, I never learned. In fact, it was taboo to take care of myself. From birth, I knew my job was to take care of my mother. My mother was a beautiful woman. She was stunning. She died at age 87. She was stunning at age 87. And yet she had a curse. And that was what it was called back in the day. And curse didn't mean just getting your period. It meant that she had mental illness. But back in the day, no one talked about mental illness. She had things called nervous breakdowns. Have you heard that phrase? Did
Yep.
you hear that when you were growing up, Denise? Nervous breakdown?
Yeah, my mom had a nervous breakdown when my father died.
Mhm.
We got sent to Alabama to stay with our grandparents.
Right. You got sent states and states and miles and hours away because your mom needed what?
Well, she had one baby who was just 9 months old, and that's all she could care for. She
All
couldn't
she could
care for
handle.
us.
And what do you think was the trauma to that baby?
Well, she didn't have a dad.
Number one, not having a dad. So none of you had a dad. She had a mom, but how could a mom who just lost her life partner be present to a 9-month-old child?
Right. Probably her basic needs were met. She got her diapers changed and her bottle because we were bottle fed.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
But when you were there, it was your job to take care of those littles, right? You
Right.
were
To
the
get the clean
eldest.
diaper, to take the dirty diaper, to fill the bottle, to play
Put
with the
them to
kid,
sleep,
which I like to do. So,
to play with them. Now that's something, but my mother had no idea. She said this was a truth my mother said. In addition to, good thing I didn't have a boy because I would have spoiled him rotten. When you're with a boy, you need to help him feel good about himself. Let him win, never win. Always get him to talk about himself. Um, Another thing she said about this was, um, well, what she didn't say, but what she meant was we as girls were supposed to be two things: needless and wantless. And therefore came the phrase, which I think almost everybody listening has heard it. And I feel like doing this drama thing when I say it. I don't ask for much. Did
right.
you ever hear that, Denise?
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
ask for much. What the hell was that phrase about?
That was a lie.
Mhm. That's
I do.
right.
I want everything. You represent me. You better do the right thing and don't cry.
You better take care of me and don't cause me any troubles.
Right.
And yet, where that was true, I don't ask for much, where that was true was the way a woman could see herself in relationship to her man.
Right.
Because a woman's work was to make sure that man was happy, 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 happy.
And
Like a
that he had
room,
plenty. So if you bought too much makeup or went to the hairdresser too often or had your fingernails done,
right?
that was against your husband.
He came first. And what did that mean was the basis. I mean, and actually, what goes around Facebook periodically is the home economics book, the guide for being a good girl in the 1950s, or maybe it was even 1945. But it says things like, you should use your makeup. So when your husband comes home, you look ready for him, which means sexual and attractive. You make sure that the kids are quiet, you get them clean, you make sure they're taking a nap, or you send them to the neighbors, you get them out of the house so that they don't disturb him.
Right.
And that whole thing about what was the whole thing about slippers and a newspaper?
Right. And a cigar
Oh,
with
season
the
four,
light. That's when
the
people
man,
smoke in the house.
right? So the man came home and he could just put on his slippers, but the slippers had to be right there. So all he had to do was take those shoes
Step
off, and I
into them.
step into the slippers. And some women even took the shoes off for the man.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Remember when Fred Rogers would come on the screen? What would he do?
He took his own shoes off, put his
And
house
even
shoes.
before that, he took his jacket off and he put his comfy sweater on.
Yep.
Right. Fred Rogers put on his own shoes. That was like, remember the time when it was the 1950s and Black people and white people not allowed to swim in the same pool, public pool. That was just, oh my God, couldn't have that happening. And so Fred Rogers put one of those children's little kiddie pools on his set. And who did he invite in? Do you remember
His
that
black
one?
friend, and they put their feet in, and he washed his feet and dried his feet. And he also had Ella Jenkins on there, a singer,
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
black
missed her.
woman. Yeah, he
Yeah.
really pushed the boundaries.
He did, and but just by having his feet, it was the officer, and I don't remember the officer's name, but he said to his friend, the officer, all dressed up, who was the officer on Fred Rogers' Neighborhood. He said, "Come on, are you hot? Yeah, I am. We'll take your shoes off, put your feet in here." And there was nothing made of it. It was just two friends sitting there chilling their, what do you
Chilling
call
their
it? Chilling
feet,
their
right.
dogs together. And they're just on TV. And what a amazing thing, because children watching would say, why can't I and my friend Mary Margaret, why can't she and I go swimming together? And then it's up to the parents to tell the lie,
Right.
to tell the lie. Or the children should have known and will get smacked around because the child should have known. That's not possible. So, yeah, back to why the woman thought she was second to the man. I'm going to tell you, legally, she was chattel. I'm a recovering attorney here, guys. And when I went to law school in 1973, I was fascinated by what the law was saying about women because it said some pretty ugly stuff about women, pretty ugly stuff about women. And law professors, their standard joke was about women, the dumb blonde that couldn't figure anything out. And by the end of my first semester, I was so sick and tired of hearing these guys from Harvard and Yale, these law professors talking about, well, the dumb blonde came in and did this, and what would you do? I
But you
think I
meant all
mentioned
women.
we
They
had,
did say dumb blonde, but they meant all women.
they meant all of us, including us. And so that's when I organized and invited people. Do you want to join me in the back row of this amphitheater 1L first year law school class? And when they start saying something, doing something sexist, I'll hiss. If you want to hiss with me, you hiss. And before we knew it, the whole class was like hissing these guys. And after a while, they called us the snake pit and they didn't want to get hissed. So they started changing, but it just was so second nature to them to talk about the dumb blondes and to treat women as second class. So it was no wonder. And when I look back at the law about that, there was a Supreme Court case ended in the 19th century that said women's brains were inadequate to be lawyers. We couldn't be lawyers. And that's true. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, all those people that wanted to be attorneys, they could study by sitting in their father's offices, but they could not be attorneys. That was one thing, but the word chattel, have you heard that word, Denise, or anybody listening? You know the word chattel?
Yes, that's like property. Cows, I think.
The example, you got it, girl. The classic example of chattel. Chattel meant possession, and the classic example was a cow. And so a man owned his cows. He owned his sheep. He owned his property, unless he was renting the property. He owned his land, you know. He owned his wife. He owned his children. He owned his slaves. It was all kind of the same, except white privilege came in if you had a white wife and white kids. But there was always a hierarchy, and the man was at the heart. Not the heart, he was at the head.
At the top, right.
He was the top of the hierarchy. So when our mothers taught us all of those things about being second class, in my case, my mother felt second class. My mother didn't finish high school. She didn't finish high school because her father was an alcoholic and a pedophile. And he drank so much with 8 kids that he left the mother to take care of these 8 kids. So given the status of girls, as soon as the girls could work, they dropped out of school and went to work. So my mother dropped out of school, and she was good with numbers. So she got a job working with numbers. But I also think my mother, because of her nervous breakdowns, which she was undiagnosed, but she probably was psychotic, because she did what happened to a number of people that are trauma survivors. It's called splitting off from yourself. So, for example, when a parent is about to hurt a child with a whip, or in my case, and did you have this too, Denise, the belt?
I actually was a clever little girl, and I would run away from
The girl.
spankings, and I would run
Ah,
away and get my mom to laugh. But my sister got a belt sometime. Actually, you know what my mom had was a wooden spoon with a hole in the middle. It was like for
oh.
pasta, where you could measure your pasta.
Mm-hmm.
But she had a wooden spoon, and it would leave a red circle on your butt where the
Ooh.
if she got your butt or your leg. But I was beat a few times fervently by my stepfather, but I believed I deserved it. So,
Well, and now let's talk about principles of being a trauma survivor. Principle number 1, I'm not worth anything. Principle number 2, it's my fault. I should blame myself, and I should come to hate myself. Because if I weren't so bad, I wouldn't get all this treatment. And what is that about? I wrote about that in my book, which is called Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You. And it is my life story in the context of trauma research, in the context of trauma literature. And what I learned is, as a child, I naturally, and Denise, we've talked about this, did this too. We blamed ourselves. If we were hurt, if someone was abusing us, we deserved it.
right.
You deserved it. You want something to cry about?
I'll give you
I'll
something to
give
cry
you
about.
something to cry about. Mhm. The message was we were bad kids. And because I was raised in a very religious background, my mother was evangelical Christian. She was born again, and that was Calvinist. And the belief there was some people were chosen, most people weren't. And the only way you could be sure that you were going to heaven and not going to hell was to dedicate your life to the Savior, your whole life to the Savior, and give up a whole bunch of stuff. wasn't just Lent you gave stuff up. It was all the time you gave stuff up. So what did a woman have to give up, Denise? To be a good
Wants,
Christian.
desires. She prepared food that was requested by the man. She took care of the house the way he wanted. She didn't really have friends or gave up friend. Now, I think that was my mom had friends. So, they had neighbors that they would do coffee clatches together. They'd go over to each other's houses and have coffee. So she had friends, but I think previous they weren't even allowed to have friends.
My mother had two ways she could have friends. One was her bridge club. That was once a month. The girls, they were always girls. They came over for bridge club. And that's the only time the house was full of smoke. Because back in the day, you could smoke in the house. And they smoked, and the smoke, we had to stay upstairs and just be good, be quiet. And the smoke would come up the stairs. I think my father would go someplace for the night so he wouldn't have to be around so many women,
Right.
married women, you know what I'm saying? So that was one thing. My mother could have her bridge club, and that was a big deal to her. The second thing that was a big deal to her was going to church, because she could be a church lady and she could devote herself to taking care of things at the church.
Right.
Church ladies went and they cleaned up, or they went and they cooked, or they did that. So she could do that too. Those were her two times that she could either be with other women or she could be out of the house.
Right. Which my mom, being a little younger, maybe the next
Mm-hmm.
generation, she was excommunicated from the church because she took birth control pills.
Oh my God, what a sinner.
So she could not
Sinner.
even go have the church lady thing, but she had Victani, which that was a exercise group. She went to bowling. She had her hair done every week.
Mhm.
Bingo. They could go to bingo.
So she had her stuff going on. She had social needs. What
She
you were
did.
saying before is that a woman's needs needed to be always secondary to taking care of her man, and also taking care of the house and taking care of the children. And none of those things was supposed to be a bother to the man. The man made the money,
Right.
and therefore he deserved an immaculate house, well-cooked meal, children that were obedient, children that never spoke up, and he needed to have his needs met.
Right.
Yeah. So even if she was not in a good mood and he was in a mood, she better be she better be sexual, because that's one of the other things you had to do. And that's back to the spousal rape thing. You're not ready, tough, whatever's.
Right.
So chattel, yes. Well, the man owned everything. And that man owned his wife, she was chattel, owned his kids, they were chattel, owned slaves if he was in that kind of a society. But there was a hierarchy. And the hierarchy meant that the man had a man. The man had a man who was over him. Now he could complain about the man, he could hate the man, he could do all of that. And what was the woman's job? I'm so
Smile. Make them
sorry. That
happy.
must be so hard. I'm so sad. Oh my God.
Support.
Just her whole being. And I remember learning the word altruism as maybe a preteen, and I got it. And I thought, that's what life is about. It's about taking such good care of other people that I feel good. And there is something to that. There is a kindness. There is a goodness of being kind. However, the illness comes in when the kindness means I don't have myself at all.
Right. The sacrifice. If you have to sacrifice to help, then it's not good.
And what that became, and I didn't know this word till I was an adult, I was dissociating. Not having a self meant I left my body behind. And I learned to do that from birth. freely from birth, if not before birth, because when I was in utero, my mother had all of this, she had all these problems and moods and fear and panic attacks. So that sparked cortisol. And as you guys probably know, cortisol is that hormone that comes through us and takes us down. It really is a Debbie Downer. So that came through the placenta to me. So pre-birth, I was ready to be down. And then from birth, when my father wouldn't even come to the hospital to see me because he found out I was a girl, he just went out drinking. Or at least that's the myth. I don't know. There was never any birth announcement sent out. There was never any celebration. It was just, oh, hell. So from
Girl.
birth, I got the thing of worthlessness. And not only was I not hugged or held, I was hit. Babies get hit. It's a horrible thing. But Denise, I know you've heard that and seen that in your experience too. Who could hit a baby?
I don't know. Monster.
I tell you who can hit a baby that's permitted is a narcissist. A narcissist does not have other human beings in his life. And I'm going to use his because I researched this. In the United States, there are more male narcissists than there are females. Yes, there are female narcissists. So you might have grown up with a mother who was a narcissist. I know people who've had that. Their mothers were all about themselves. Do you think your mother might have had some of that, Denise?
Yes, I do. And she still does, like she sees the world only from what serves her.
Right. Right. And you have worked really hard, as I worked really hard, to get to know these parents as people. And yet what I kept coming back to with my father was he could never see another person as a person. Everybody else was there to serve him.
Right.
And it was complicated by culture because my father was the son of an immigrant, and the culture was the Sicilian male immigrant culture, which was really harsh on women. And women could be beaten around, they could be smacked around, they could be, they were at home, they had to if one man in the family died, the women had to wear black for a whole year. And there are always guys dying. So these women were wearing black all the time. If you were in Sicily, if you were a single woman, it was a thing to sit out on the front steps, the front stoop, or the front balcony and watch people go by. If you were an unmarried woman, you had to turn around. You couldn't face the people walking by. And so much of this was you couldn't reveal, God forbid, anything between your legs because you had to be really private about that. My family was ultra private about that. I mean, ultra private about that. We didn't ever even talk about body parts. And when we were taught how to take a bath, because we took baths, not showers, we were literally taught how to pull the water into those private parts. Don't you ever touch them. Pull the water in and put soap in the water. So that's how you get clean. And I thought, wait a minute, what? I'm soaping every other part of my body. What is that? There was never an explanation. That was just the rule. And I don't think we were the only ones that got taught that.
Right. Also, like I got that admonishment a lot, act like a lady,
Right.
which that meant
Ladylike.
keep your legs together and shut up, basically.
And nobody wants to see anything but a smile on a little girl's face.
Right.
Well, honey, I was in tears. I mean, I wasn't not allowed to cry. I stopped crying when I was 3 because I learned, as my sister told me, if they see you crying, they'll hit you harder. They'll hit you, and they did. So I learned to keep my tears back. But keeping tears back meant a face of deep sorrow and sadness. And not being able to say anything meant choking things back. So, and seeing horrible things going on and not being able to say anything about it, that meant, how could I have a smile on my face? But did you learn, Denise, how to put that smile on your face no matter what?
I smiled all of the time. I was known for being a smiler, and yeah, I just only smiled. I was a good girl. I tried to be a good girl.
Because what was the benefit? What was the what did you win by
What
being a good
did you
girl?
win? Well, at least some approval in the home, and you wouldn't be spanked, and you wouldn't be, I don't know. My sister, she didn't smile all the time.
Mhm.
And so I don't know what the bonus was.
what would they say to her when she didn't smile? Do you remember what they would say?
Sour puss, you're a
Right.
sour puss. Yeah. She was, to my parents, she was annoying and a pain in the neck.
Yeah. Because
So,
she had needs. She
right.
had
So I
wants.
got to be a good girl. That was it was own goodness just by
Mhm.
being smiling and being a good girl. That was your prize. You
So
are
the
a good
smile,
girl.
you got it, girl. So the smile was your path, your ticket to being seen as a good girl. And the smile was your ticket out of punishment. So if
Right.
you smiled, they said, Denise, she's good. Be like that. Be like your older sister. And then when you went to school, and some of us had a hard time in school, and you've been really clear, you had a hard time. You had a difficulty with reading. And so, how
Right.
did smile help you in school with the nuns?
Yeah, that probably helped me there too. Teacher's pet. I would always offer to take the trash, clean the board, clean the erasers. I was very good, very charming, but not a good student.
And let's now interlace this with the exacerbation, which is the making it even thicker, making it even a double whammy, is with narcissism. My father was a narcissist. Your mom was a narcissist. What that meant was they were the only people in the family.
Right. Well, they're
They
the
were the
only
only,
one that counts.
they were the only one that counted.
Although my mom was socialized to believe that the men, the same way she got the same rules you did, make them feel good. You know, they're the best. We gotta, make them feel good, basically. So she did succumb to that. So the man was always the top, but she still, for the children, we had to be her good, be good for her.
So what we're really talking about here, whether it's the rules of a sexist family or it's the rules of a narcissist, what we're talking about is power. Who's got the power? And you're drawing an interesting distinction here because a narcissist must have all the power. So what happens if a narcissist is the woman, as your mother is, and there's a man in the house? And that is very well shown because what the narcissist woman can do is she gets her needs met one way or the other. And that's her priority, and that becomes the man's priority. How did your mom? You already said your mom got her needs met by getting her hair done once a week. My mother did too. She got to bowl. She got to do bingo. She got to go out to clubs with your father. Those are things that she liked. But how else was your mother in charge, even of your father? How else did your mother have power in
Well,
the home?
she was in charge of the checkbook and
Ah,
paying the bills and
mhm.
what groceries were available. And like there would be pop we call it pop in the Midwest.
Yeah,
There would be pop in the refrigerator, but it was only for him.
right,
Like
right.
I never liked orange or grape pop my whole life. I never would drink it because that was his.
Wow.
I
Isn't
can't
that
remember if it
amazing?
was grape or orange. I think it was orange crush that we weren't allowed to, we weren't allowed to touch that. That was his.
And
But she
pop, by
was
the
in
way,
charge of having that too. Like
right?
she,
She made sure it was there.
right.
So now he also had a drug, right?
Oh, what?
A drug. He had his own addiction. Your biological father?
My biological father, yes. I believe, the stories are when some stories come from my sister Debbie, who's just younger than I.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that he was addicted to heroin and that
Ooh,
I was born addicted to heroin. But no one has ever confirmed that. That came from my sister Debbie, who, she has mental health issues too. So I
right.
always believed what she told me. However, now that I'm a mature adult, I'm not so sure if that was true or not.
You know what I picked up, Denise, that your dad was addicted to alcohol.
Oh yeah, the family was alcoholics also. They owned a nightclub, and my mom will say that he was an alcoholic, yeah.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
also heard that he was a heroin addict and that when I was born, I was addicted to heroin.
Wow. Did
But
they
I
ever
don't
talk
know if
about,
that's true or not.
I wonder, did they ever talk about special things that they had to do with you when you were born? Because that
I
you had
did
a
have to
hard
go
time.
back to the hospital because I lost weight instead of gained weight, which I think
Right.
that was failure to thrive.
Failure to thrive, but that could have been also related to
Right, drug addiction.
drugs. Wow, because you would have had to get off your addiction.
Right.
Wait a minute, is that true? No, you would not have gotten the addiction through her.
No,
So you were not a fetal alcohol. Were you fetal alcohol?
I
Because
don't think so. I don't
I
think
don't think so. I think
she,
it comes through the female.
right. And you can see on people that have fetal alcohol syndrome a little bit of something in their eyes, which I don't think I have that.
No, I think we'll have to research that. But as I recall, and I don't mean to be bringing up these horrible, harsh things, but they are horrible, harsh things. And
Right,
when they're not talked about, they become three times as harsh and three times as
right.
horrible.
And when we're
And
trauma survivors,
mhm.
we try, we need to talk about it. We need to know what we were subjected to.
So
Also, a Valium.
yeah. Oh God,
Actually, I
yes.
wasn't addicted to, my sister didn't, my father was addicted to heroin, supposedly, or used heroin, but my mom took Valium. So what my sister said was I was born addicted to Valium.
And that's possible, right? Because that
Right.
got in your system through the
Not
placenta.
heroin, but Valium. Yeah. From my
Okay.
mom.
Okay. So that would have taken a withdrawal too, because the Valium was messing with brain synapses.
Right.
Girl. So here's the thing. Alcoholics, like narcissists, have a really hard time caring about anybody else because their first love is their drug.
Right.
And it's not a friendly love. They have to have it. If your dad didn't have alcohol, he would have gone on the, what do they call it, going on the skids or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. My mom claims that he would come home drunk and hit her and that
Mm-hmm.
he fell a lot because my sister Debbie falls a lot and gets hurt now in her adult phase. And she said that's just like her dad,
Mm.
fell a lot.
That would be worth looking into because I just saw a video of twins and one twin fell down a lot and the other twin didn't. And the mother was saying, people are saying maybe I should take her to the doctor. Well, yes, please. Please get that child to the doctor to see what's going on. But the thing about having an addiction to a drug is that drug becomes your whole life. And heroin is a tough one. It owns you. It's interesting because I was just at a meeting of other trauma survivors. I go to like four of those a week, plus us, and I was talking about, we were talking about traits that trauma survivors have. I'm going to read you one. This is the trait we were focused on Sunday, and we all get to choose what we want to focus on, and then people can say whatever they want to. But here was the trait. It was trait 7. We get, what do you think of this, Denise? We get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. It's,
True.
yes. Oh my God. And when I do stand up for myself, sometimes I get overwhelmed by guilt. I get overwhelmed by guilt. And trait 1, the first trait of trauma survivors is we become isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Why do we isolate? It's not safe.
Right.
And there's nobody there that loves us. One of the first things I learned, I could say from my soul, and it was so painful coming out, but it was true. The first thing I was able to say out loud about myself when I felt I was going to be listened to was, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about me. That was the loud and clear message. So at this meeting, when we were talking about being needless and wantless, particularly about feeling guilty if we stood up for ourselves, and we can give plenty of examples of that. And if you're listening, I invite you, when have you taken a stand for something, particularly for yourself, not for, not for somebody else, but when have you taken a stand for yourself and felt like, I shouldn't have done that. That was really bad. Or authority figures, anybody who's an authority figure can scare the bejesus out of us. Why? Because they have the power to hurt us. And so now we're back to this thing about power. And mothers who are narcissists have power over the children, totally, and also have a certain power over their male partners or female partners, because they're the center of the universe. They will do what they have to do to survive. And it's not as easy as being a male narcissist. As being a male narcissist, it's all right there for you. Going to cook for you, going to clean for you, going to iron for you, going to take care of your sexual needs, going to have do parties when you want parties, going to take care of whatever you need to have done, going to scrimp on the money, make sure that you've got what you need, So here's what I said at a meeting, that we were talking about this whole thing about feeling guilty about ourselves when we stood up for ourselves. And I found myself saying, how sometimes trauma survivors just say the truth? Have you ever found yourself just doing that? You just say the truth? Do you do that?
Yeah. I do have one instance that I remember, that there was a fellow that was he was like a mental health specialist at Great Lakes Community. And he came in and tried to talk to us like he was superior, like stating all these stories. And I did end up feeling guilty about it later, but I was like, I am not listening to this. This is not helpful. You are
Good.
not. Yeah. And I stood up to him, and people were shocked too, because he was like one of the only men working in the field. But I didn't buy his crap.
Good for you. How did you remember? Can you go back there enough to know how you felt when you got the courage to speak up?
Right. Which that's really one of my few moments that now I could say I was angry that he was trying to be superior, that he was presenting himself as superior to us teachers.
Now, folks, 2 things are important here. Number 1, trauma survivors, particularly girls, are not allowed anger. We are to be the recipients of rage. We are not allowed to have rage. Some of us escape that. But Denise, when you get to know her, you'll see that having the feeling of anger was really not allowed. So I'm delighted, Denise, to hear that you did that and you felt that. Good for you.
Yeah, I felt it, and I was so mad that he, felt like he was superior to all of us. And as it turns out, he ended up being fired not so long after that because he
Good.
was not good at, working with women and
Hmm.
giving women their voice, where
And this,
Head Start
right.
is about having your voice.
And that's where Janice worked. And so when she's talking about a man coming in, it's coming into a wonderful, really powerful program called Head Start,
Right. And
which,
this
wow.
classroom was impeccable. I mean, all the rules were followed. And you can't come in and tell me blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah from this study or that study. I'm like, no.
Every child was cared for. I mean, Janice devoted herself to being the most loving, facilitating teacher that any child could have so that the child could unfold to become who she was meant to be. Janice was not the type of teacher that said, 1, 2, 3, ABC, you got to learn this if you're going to get out of here. No, Janice was like saying, you're okay when you're here. You're
Right. You're
okay with
safe.
me. You're
Yep.
safe.
You're safe and you can do what pleases you and what makes you happy.
And we'll help you get along with other people too, because we're in a classroom
Right.
with all these other people. And so, yeah, what happens when you and Josh want the truck at the same time? Of course, not two people can have it. We're gonna figure out how to do that together.
We're going to figure out how to take turns.
That's right. I don't want to take turns. Well, I understand that. Of course you don't. Josh doesn't want to take turns, but you got one truck. One truck. So you want the truck, right? Josh wants the truck, right? How can you both have the truck? Well, he shouldn't have the truck. I'm sure you went all through that, right?
Right. Well, we practiced taking turns too. Like we would pass things around in the circle time. Now it's my turn. Now it's your turn. It was, I practiced it away from the truck incident so that when the
Away from the
truck
hospital.
incident happened, I would get cooperate. Typically, even now at story time, there's certain monkeys that this kid wants this monkey, this kid wants this phone. And all I really have to do is say, well, we can take turns. At the second verse, you can have that monkey and they can have this phone or
I love
whatever.
it. I love it. So these are basic life skills. That's in part why Fred Rogers was so powerful because he was doing what Head Start does. He was
Right.
doing what an excellent early childhood professional does. He was helping a child learn the life skills to accept herself, to find strength and goodness in herself, thanks, and also to find it in other people. The problem, here's what I wanted to say about narcissists and how narcissists are particularly effective with trauma survivors. What I found myself saying when we were discussing this point about we feel guilty when we stand up for ourselves, I found myself saying, if you're a narcissist, you own me. You own me. And I meant that because I was so terrified of my father's annihilation
Right.
that when he was angry or upset with me, there was nothing I felt I could do to be safe. Nothing. And when I blacked out, when he would beat me so much I would black out, I didn't know if I was going to live. Blacking out, how does a child know if that's dead or alive? So narcissists, I identified with someone having absolute power. My father was the god in the household. He had absolute power. So much of my recovery as a trauma survivor is to learn about what narcissists are and to not get into the same pattern with the narcissist that I did with my father. But it takes decades for that. It's taken
It
me a really
does.
long time. However, I want to say, Denise and I find we have all these parallels as trauma survivors. And I was in my 20s. I was teaching at a Quaker school in Washington, just outside of Washington, D.C. And the Quakers were really wonderful about how they helped their teachers. So they got all the first year teachers together and we got taken up to Philadelphia, which was where it was a big Quaker center, Quaker universe there. And we went through a week of training for new teachers. And here's the incident that I had, same thing as Denise. We were talking we were being asked about something. There was a male teacher in the front of the room, and he would have us stand up when we spoke. That was okay. So the person that was in charge of the classroom, the trainer guy, basically trained the teacher guy, he had a guy stand up, and the guy started saying, well, we'd only have to be concerned about this with boys because girls just can't do that. They just they're not going to be able to do that. They don't know how to do that. They're not smart. The minute he got to the word smart, I stood up. I'm in the back row because that's where I like to be so I can watch for safety who's coming at me from where. I stood up and I said to this whole Quaker group, bullshit. Bullshit. And there was a moment of silence. And then everybody applauded.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays we've come forward that in women's power, especially in women's jobs, like in women only work.
So that was like probably 1970. And so it was still a world where men could say things like that, but not, like that guy coming into Head Start could not say that to you.
Nope.
And this guy coming into Quaker meeting where Quakers do a lot about people being equal. They do a lot about making sure that, oh my God, DEI, which is really just about being fair, being loving, being kind, So when I did that, here's the thing, the whole thing about, do I feel good about myself for saying that? Well, my first feeling was, I'm enraged at this guy. He's not, don't say that about girls.
Oh, I'm going to be in big trouble.
And then I felt good in the moment. And then there was that moment of silence before I knew it was going to happen. When everybody applauded, I felt good, but I felt good because there was acknowledgement.
Right.
But I also felt afraid and why are we afraid of authority figures? Because authority figures have done arbitrary and capricious things to people.
Right. Just like Elon Musk is doing right now.
Thank you. With that big chainsaw. I didn't know until this last week when I was talking with a drugs guy that knows a lot about drugs. Elon Musk is high on ketamine. Did you know that?
No, I don't even know what that is.
I had to ask about this. It's an antidepressant and it really makes you high and you don't feel any kind of downers. You're the best. You're the king. It makes you really above everybody. So when he was doing that with the, what was it he had? The big chopper? Chainsaw. Yeah, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's coming through with that. He's high when he's doing that. He's high. Now I'm believing this guy who's 49 years is an expert on drug addiction and alcohol addiction. So I believe him. But oh my God. So what we've got is arbitrary and capricious, and we've got lies going on from the head of the family. If the head of the family is the government, trauma survivors are in for a really hard time right now because there are no or few guarantees that what we counted on for safety is going to happen. The man who is Hegspeth, is he the Attorney General? He has on, or I don't know what he is, but he has on his body a tattoo that is a symbol of getting rid of the 19th Amendment, which means he believes that women shouldn't have the right to vote.
Right.
And the Vice President of the United States was saying, only if you have kids.
Right.
Should you be able to vote, or you get more votes if you have kids? And I was thinking,
what about unmarried cat women? They don't get to vote.
That's it. What's her name? What's the really popular singer who wrapped a cat around her neck and called herself an unmarried cat woman?
Pink.
And she would do it too. Trust me.
She would do it too.
Who's the one that's got the long blonde hair and she gives money away all the time to good causes? Taylor Swift.
I know who you mean. But I can't.
Taylor
Swift. Taylor Swift.
Yeah. So we better check the time. Are we down to the last
seconds?
We're just about at the time. Okay, so Denise, I'm going to invite you to do this, and I'm going to invite myself to do the same thing. Let's connect with our listeners by maybe summarizing something that came out of our conversation that mattered to you. Doesn't have to be a tip, but it could be about how to be a trauma survivor and still feel alive and well, or something issue that was raised for you. So let's look at that as we invite people that are listening. So it's just been a regular day with Denise and me, two trauma survivors walking each other home. And we have so much in common, even though we're born like a decade apart or something, right?
Right.
Even though the narcissist in Denise's family was her mother, was my father in my family, we have differences, but we have so much in common because we're trauma survivors. So, Denise, is there anything that you feel particularly strong about as you look
Well,
back on this?
something special about today is that I was able to find a time when I had anger and expressed it. So I'm happy about that because I really it's something that I think in my healing that I always wonder, where's my anger? Is something that I have wondered about always in my healing. I don't have that. And it's suppressed. So is it suppressed so hard that so that was a good realization for me.
That is really powerful. And do you think you're speaking for other trauma survivors in a way by saying what you said?
I do because I think a lot of, us, not only do we fear authority figures and aim to please,
Mm-hmm.
uh a lot of us suppress our anger, our passion, which
Yes,
that's what it worries me is I want my passion, and anger is one of those ways that we express passion.
that's right. And so when you get out there twice a week now and you hold up those signs, you're expressing anger.
I am Black Lives Matter
And now
with
what's
my
your latest
son.
sign?
And my latest one is super callous, oh, fascist, racist, sexist, lying, rapist.
You got it, girl. And you're holding that up. There's anger behind that sign, and with good reason. I'll
Yes,
conclude with this, and I'm inviting people that are listening. What do you take? What's your takeaway here? What touched you? What spoke to you that you might want to talk about further with somebody you trust, or with a trauma therapist, or get to a meeting where there are trauma survivors, whatever it is that works for you. I just had it, the thing that was so powerful for me, and I want to call it back. And it's not coming to me, but there's another thing that's very powerful, and that is fear of annihilation. Trauma survivors, as Denise said up front, our brains get locked into this autonomic response, which shuts down our ability to be who we are. All I become when I'm shut down is a survivor. And I will do whatever it takes, whatever I have to do. As a child, the youngest in my family, I would, and my father was violent, people were running around getting hit. I would become a fetal position and I'd go hide behind a chair in the living room. We were not allowed in the living room, so I knew I'd be punished for going there. But I hide behind the chair and hope that no one would look behind the chair because I was so terrified. So here it is, comes to me, Denise. The thing that I was most terrified of from my father was being killed, and of my mother was going crazy, because with her nervous breakdowns, I thought, this is how women are. This is how women are in the world. And I looked for strong women. And in my corporate town of Corning, New York, we didn't have women leaders. Where did we have women leaders? Have we had a president of the United States yet? That's a
not
woman,
yet.
capable, smart, gifted as they are? The answer is no. So, my friends, take care of yourself. Denise, what's one wish you have for folk as we say goodbye to them?
I wish that we could be helpful. That's really what I want to be, is helpful to other people if they need support, if they're unable to talk about their abuse, that we set the example that it's okay, it's safe here.
And I wish, thank you. And I wish if you, like I, have a first response of, I shouldn't do that. It's called shooting all over ourselves. I shouldn't do that. I should take care of this first. I should take care of that first. Or I haven't really earned this. I invite you to take a moment of just gentle kindness to yourself and do something for yourself. I'm not always great at this. Denise does this better than I do. I am not always great at this. And sometimes I am really good at it. So I invite you, my wish for you is do something for yourself when you feel bad about yourself. Chocolate's a good thing, but it might just be walking outside. And we know 10 minutes outside is so healing for trauma survivors. You'll feel it within 10 minutes.
Right. And water is so healing. And like, even to the point of taking a bath. When I'm upset, I take a bath. I want to take a bath
Mm-hmm.
because
There's
water
something
is a
very,
good
mhm.
healer.
It's like cleansing, and there's a religious term for it. Ablution. It's an ablution. It's an ablution. Okay, friends, we are so glad you joined us. And anytime you feel like you want to join in and join the chat, yippee skippy. We'll be so glad for that. And
We
meanwhile,
will.
we'll be here for you every week.
Yeah. And also, if you see me on Facebook, I'm willing to chat with you there as well.
Good point. Good point. And right, you can connect with me that way, or you can just go online and look me up, Holly Elissa Bruno, and you'll find ways to reach me that way too. So God bless you. Take care of yourself. And remember, being a trauma survivor does not have to be a life sentence. It can be an invitation to living your true life.
Yep.
Okay, Denise, love you. Had a good
See you
time
next
again.
week.
Okay, girl, let me click off on recording. And are you sure you want to stop recording to the cloud? Yes.